I have to add a little on my bio. We have a 8-week-old Cole now, so it's a little crazy at our house with a 2-year-old, 5-year-old, and 8-week-old here. But thanks everybody for having me. It's great to be here. It was great to hear from Brian and Katie for the invite. I'll start with just a quick little update. My Orange Theories are in Washington State, so for COVID, we were shut down for basically a year. We weren't able to, most of Orange Theory opened up in July of 2020, about 900 of their studios, and we didn't open until about February, March of this year. So we started a little bit slow, crept up from that 350 to about 500 by May. And May, we were able to finally take our mask off in Washington, and we shot from about 500 to back up to 700 members, about 800 by August. And then again, they added the mask back on. So we're still fully masked here in Washington, which, with fitness isn't our favorite thing, but we have to make do. Currently, we're at 813 and 750 reoccurring, but that's number one, number two studios in the state of Washington. We're some of the top nationally still. And I really believe our success is from our staffing. We have a full staff, while some of our other studios that are really close to us, they're still operating with about a half staff, a really big need. And I did a webinar on how to retain staff members in September, but today I really wanted to focus specifically on hiring, training, and managing salespeople, all right, your sales staff. So I'll just go ahead and dive in. So starting with your salespeople, this has been a challenge for across the country in many industries. This is not just a franchise thing. I wish I had a couple magic bullets that would solve all the hiring needs, but I don't. I can share a few thoughts, some tips on really making the most of the applicants you do get in the door to really maximize each one though. So once you have some applicants, the first thing I look for is passion in our business. And I say this specifically with sales in mind. I look for passion about the industry and the business much more than I look for sales skills. Sales can be taught. That's it. That's an easy thing to teach. But you can't really infuse passion, right? They either kind of have it or they don't, or they have to be capable of it once they are familiar with your brand. So, I always have them take a workout or whatever if your business is, you have to have them use the product and service. I love having them interact with our current front desk. I don't have them meet a manager at first. I want them to go in, take the workout. I want them to see how they interact with staff. Sometimes it's crazy how they'll interact with staff. Sometimes great, sometimes not so great when they don't know a manager is watching or going to ask those staff members. But I want to see, would they be fired up to become a member on their own? Would they be fired up to be part of that community and provide that opportunity for others? So passion for the business is always the first thing I look at. Second is coachability. Again, we can teach sales, but some people are going to pick things up better than others. So coaching, being able to be coached is at the top of the list. Sales can be taught, but I need somebody who's going to be willing to learn. So I love looking for people that have sports experience. The higher level, the better. When I see a collegiate athlete, those are the people I really love working with them. But also look for other areas where they had to put in a significant amount of time to learn something, because that's what they're going to have to do with sales. Sales isn't going to be something like a computer program where you flip the switch and they got it. They have to spend time learning it. So are they great at a musical instrument? Are they an Eagle Scout? My favorite though is always something with group, right? So like that team sport, I always go back to that. If they're successful or a standout in team sports, that's huge. Now, oftentimes when we look for salespeople, sometimes, especially if we're lacking in sales, we're like, I need to come in, I need to get a really good salesperson in because we're lacking there. We kind of look for that sales shark, maybe somebody who worked at one of the big box gyms who that's all they did was sales and they love sales. Those types of applicants usually aren't my favorite, and of course there's always exceptions, but even though sales is a big part of our front desk job, it's not the only thing they do, right? I don't want them being too big for their britches where they don't do cleaning because I'm the sales expert or whatever. I don't want somebody who's going to neglect the other responsibilities they have. And I don't want somebody whose their main goal is only to make sales, because that's not how we operate. That's not how we run our business. I want someone who has our members' best interest at heart over just a higher commission check. So I know sometimes when we're hurting for sales, we're really, we'll even target our ads to like sales experience. We don't really do that. We front desk, customer service, and sales. I want somebody who's passionate about the business and is coachable more than that sales shark. And then the last key on hiring I'll cover is a really big key for us is defining our values and our culture of what we want on our team. And this can be different for everybody. So do you have a friendly competition or a competitive environment? Is yours all about fun? Is it about personal growth? How do you run your business? Have you really defined what your values are? And then hire for culture fit. Before I share our values, I like to ask them, hey, what are some of your personal values or the values you look for in a workplace that you thrive in? And I want to hear some examples that they say first. And then I also, if they tell me their value is teamwork, I'm going to ask them, well, explain to me, tell me a little bit about a specific example where you showed teamwork at your last place of work. And then I'll give them some examples of our culture and some of the values that we have. And again, I'm going to ask them for specific examples of, do they think they could operate in that with that culture value? So for example, one of ours is a community builder. That's a big value we have, is being a community builder in our business. So I'd ask them, where's a time that you've helped build a community in the past, and what role did you have in building that? And I want to hear how they really fit with our values, because if they don't really fit with our values, it's going to be a tough fit. And so those are just a couple quick tips for hiring. So look for passion, the coachability, and then their values, and ask for those specific examples. Now let's talk about training salespeople. So you hired some new staff members. It's time to teach them how to sell. And real sales, it's a set of skills. It's not just one skill. It's a set of different skills kind of blended together just right. But skills have to be developed, right? It's not as easy as memorizing a task list or how the computer operating system works. So whenever I think of learning any type of skill, I like to compare it to learning a musical instrument. So if you first pick up a trumpet, the first time you've ever played it, and you start blowing on it, you're not going to sound like Louis Armstrong, right? And it takes time to develop a skill. It takes direction and a lot of coaching to develop a skill. It takes practice and feedback. So when you're onboarding your staff, once you onboard them, they're not trained. That's going to be a continual work in process. However, if you do your initial training right with them, you can set them up for early success, which will help frame their expectations to become confident, comfortable, and successful salespeople. So whenever I used to teach training with my managers, I would always talk about the 4 C's of training. So this is great to get down for, I still, after running training for 20 years, I had these 4 words at the top of my training leaders guide every time I would run training. And the first C is conviction. So your goal when training is to create conviction in your product or service. It's very difficult for someone to sell without genuine conviction. The second is connection. So connection with the manager or owner. You shouldn't be buddy-buddy, but you should have a good connection with them, and they should see that their manager or owner cares about their staff, that we as owners or managers, we care about the best interest of our people. We want to get to know them. We want to know stuff. It's not just, hey, here's your job, get to work, don't talk to me, right? So conviction, connection. The third one is confidence. They need to feel confident that I can do this. And especially if, I recognize some names on here. When you're working in health or beauty or fitness, most of the people that work with us, they're not salespeople. They're health or beauty or fitness people. So that confidence of sales is usually the thing they come in lacking. So you want to make sure your training isn't too overwhelming, because in the process of training, you want them thinking, I got this, I can do this. And then the last C is comfortable. I want them comfortable in the environment. It should be a fun and safe place for to work. They know they're not going to get yelled at if they mess up, or what they're comfortable with their different tasks. And a lot of that, is with sales. A lot of people are intimidated for sales. So how do you make them feel comfortable with your sales process? And I'll get into that here right now. So a few highlights of things I would focus on is, first, I always want to get to know a little bit about them. When they come into training, I don't want to just throw them in to another shift or stuff. We do that as part of our interview process, but when it's time to train, once they got the job, I want to get to know them a little bit before I start digging into the training. I want to build a connection. Many of you have heard me talk about our sales process before and how big of a role that building rapport plays. That's one of the first steps. So when I'm training somebody, I'm basically using the same sales process on them as I would use with a prospect. So I'm training our people. I'm selling them on why they should want to do an amazing job and how incredible our team is. And so when you're training, you basically kind of fall into two paths. You can either kind of take the dictator role of here's what you do, here's the role, I'm the boss, here's the expectations, or you can kind of sell them on learning the right way. Now, if you haven't heard me talk about sales before, that might sound really weird. You're like, I don't want to have to convince my people to do a good job. But real sales isn't about convincing. So real sales is about finding someone's problem or need and then providing a solution. So again, going back to rapport, I like to start with that so I know a little bit about them, what their interests are. This helps me with relatable examples when I'm teaching. I always like to use analogies and things. So if I know a little bit about them, I can use some examples that really apply to them. I want to know what their future goals are. And this is so I can build value in the skills they're going to learn here and how it's going to affect their future. So those are all things that I want to learn from them in the rapport process. So everything I'm doing in training is very strategic. You know, I want to play chess, not checkers. I'm not just trying to get them competent for their role. I want to train this person to be around for a long time. You know, I'm training this person to share with everyone how much they love their job. I want them leaving their first couple of days of work, just telling all of their friends about how awesome their new job is. You know, I'm training this person to be able to train the next person. I want them to be able to train other people. I want to train. You never know who your next future GM or assistant manager or just one of those culture setters in your business could be. So I want to train every person like they could be my next GM down the road. And those are just some basic training tips that I would use with anybody, regardless if they're doing sales or not. But here is kind of a bullet point version of what I teach for the sales part. And this is exactly what I teach during my course in detail. We'd spend an hour on each one of the steps. And side note, by the way, just going through that, I'm sure you can see how the amount of referrals you would get would differ a lot if you are selling your people and doing a great job versus that dictator role, right? If you're really selling your people and really being about them on how much this job is going to help them and how they can do a great job, we still get almost majority of our staff members from referrals from other staff members. And so that's a great way, especially in an environment like this, where you place an ad, you don't know really what you're going to get. Those referrals from solid staff members who have been around a long time is great. So let's get into the steps on the salespeople though. So each one of these steps, when done well, will make the next step much easier all the way to making a sale. And this approach works for somebody who loves selling. However, it was really designed for people who are super scared, intimidated by sales. I'm only doing sales because it's the part of my job that lets me work in the industry I love, right? I don't like this part of my job, but it's a requirement if I want to work here, and which is probably the majority of people that we have in our franchise businesses, right? So the first thing we do is we set the foundation. And this is big because everything else we're going to do is build on top of this. And the foundation is what is their objective when they meet a new prospect. So it should not be to make a sale. So like, hey, okay, you have a new person coming in, taking their first class. Your goal is to get a sale. No, that's not their goal, right? And when you say that, if they don't like sales, you're already off on the wrong foot, okay? So you want something more beneficial. It should be something more long-term for making a sale, helping people accomplish their goals, whatever it is. Our specific one at our Orange Theories, when we work with our people, I say our goal is for every new person we meet is we want to turn them into a long-term member who becomes an active part of our community. Okay, so it's a sale they have to buy to be able to be a long-term member, but that's not the goal. That's just one step in a much longer process. And when you're explaining this to new salespeople, instead of saying your job is to sell, you're saying, hey, we want to create long-term members and build an active community. And if you were on the sales side, which one sounds more attractive to you, right? Most people can really get much more behind that. Yeah, I want to build a community. That sounds fun. I want to help people versus I need to make sales, right? So once we have that foundation, then we take the 5 steps on top of that. And the first step we always talk about is build rapport, create that relationship of trust. And, you know, you can ask your people, do you like getting to know people? And most of your new people are like, yeah, that sounds great. It's not a very intimidating thing when you're teaching sales. And so it's a great first step. The second step after building rapport is asking great questions. So now remember, each step helps the next step. So the better rapport you have, the better answers you're going to get from your questions. You know, especially in fitness and beauty and health, we work with people that have pretty intimate goals. they're not going to be upfront with you about what their goals really are unless there's some kind of trust and connection. You're going to hear things like, oh, I want to get in better shape versus I'm huffing and puffing up the stairs and I'm too tired to play with my kids, right? That's a much bigger problem to solve than I'd like to get in better shape. But they're not going to tell you that stuff unless you have good rapport and you ask them great questions to draw that out. So first step is rapport. Second step is asking questions. Third step is educate. We educate our clients. And again, each step, the wording is important, right? We're not pitching, we're not convincing. This is not where you get into your spiel, your presentation. This is where you're going to educate your customers on your product or service. The key in this step is to customize as much as possible to fit the information they gave you when they ask questions. For Orange Theory, there's a whole ton of things that are great about the business. I don't want them talking about every single one to every single person. I want them to focus on the 2 or 3 that are in alignment with what that person's goals were, what they learned when they were asking them questions. It should be a little different every time. If you're just doing the same canned pitch every time, you're just pushing, right? You're not actually working, you're not selling, you're not trying to fill a need. You're not doing real sales there. So third step is educate. And again, think about it from your staff members' point of view. When they're learning sales, so far, their job is to get to know people, to ask questions, to find out about them, and to educate. Those don't sound very intimidating, right? Then we get to step 4, and that's the dreaded handling objections. Now, that's not actually what I usually, when I'm going over my steps, I'll say handling objections with a big X or a line through it. We don't teach handling objections. Most sales trainers teach it. That's just a part of sales. But the fact of the matter is that it's generally way too intimidating for the type of salespeople we work with in our business. And it does not lead to confidence or enthusiasm. And that's what we're trying to do when we're training them, is we want to build confidence and enthusiasm, that conviction, that excitement. So you don't need to teach them how to have a bunch of rebuttals prepared. Instead, teach them to be good listeners, right? Find out what's really holding a client back. Make sure that client feels heard and they feel understood. The key to that, by the way, is really learning how to ask the right clarifying questions. And that's a whole other, spend a half hour on that part alone. But that's asking those clarifying questions. So it's what really helps that client feel understood. And it also kind of clears out those smoke screen objections that are really difficult to handle. And so after you've listened to them, you've helped them feel understood, then you just provide a solution, right? Most of your businesses have 3 to 4 objections or concerns that make up 80 to 90% of the total objections you get. And so just make sure as an owner or a manager that you have at least 1 to 2 potential solutions for each one of those. If it's price, you have a lower one, or you have a payment plan on something. There's lots of answers for those. But those first 2 keys are vital. When you listen and you show understanding to your client, they're much more open to hearing your solution than if you're just throwing rebuttals back at them. And as a staff member, that process, again, feels a lot less intimidating than typical sales. Can you get to know people? Can you ask them questions? Can you educate them about our product? Can you listen, understand them, and then provide some solutions to them, right? That's not intimidating. It's not as scary as typical sales is. Now, at that point, a sale should be made, right? Or if we don't sell, that's fine. We don't sell all of them, but majority we should sell, but we're not done, right? Because remember, the goal wasn't to make a sale. You have a larger objective. So the last step, the 5th step, is to reassure and bridge. So reassure is basically just making them feel great about their purchase. Try to tie back to their goal. Hey, we're totally going to help you accomplish whatever, XYZ, whatever it was. We want them walking out feeling great and telling everybody like, oh, you got to come here. It was so awesome. I'm so excited to join. And so that's the reassure part. The second step, when I say bridge, what I mean is bridge that person from a sale to whatever your objective was. So there are steps that we can take at the point of sale that can help them get to our long-term objective of having them be a long-term member, a part of the community, or whatever it is. So maybe it's something as simple as getting them into your Facebook, or downloading your app, or scheduling their next workout, or a really cool new member packet, which has different coupons or education stuff, whatever it is. One of the things we're just starting to use in our studios is we use an automated text and email flow, where our new members will get a video every few days when they first start introducing them to all the different coaches and staff members, and gives them some tips on best practices, like how to use a rower better, or some of the things that new members typically struggle with. So what are you doing to bridge your customer from just, okay, I bought, to how do I turn them into a long-term member? And just with the training, the biggest difference I've really heard from working with a lot of franchisees between what a franchisor is teaching and what kind of they've learned when I'm working with them is franchisors generally teach the what, but they're often missing the how. So just telling a front desk person to, fill out a client intake form, ask them the questions on the form, and if they want to sign up afterwards, then you give them some solutions. You throw here's your rebuttals. That's not teaching people how to sell. So real sales is a set of skills that takes time, training, and practice to develop. So make sure you're providing those for your staff. All right, last section. Try to buzz here through. I might be a little over here. So you have some salespeople. Now, what do you do with them? Right? So how often do you find yourself constantly repeating the same corrections for your same staff members? They just don't get it. Why do I have to keep repeating myself? The question is, are you managing their behavior, or are you digging to find the cause of the behavior? So if you're managing the behavior, but never fix the root cause of the behavior, you're going to be doing it constantly. It's going to be a never-ending circle, and it's going to drive you crazy, and it's going to drive them crazy. It's not going to be a fun work environment. So how do we fix the cause? 4 quick tips on how to really dive deep and find the cause of the behavior that you're trying to manage or fix. First one is, old school Dale Carnegie, respond instead of react. Take a minute to think before quickly reacting to a behavior or results that we don't want. I'm victim of this myself. I'm standing behind the door. I'm listening to what's going on. They say something totally wrong, and I want to oh, what are you doing? Right? Pause. Think, really, this really tends to hurt salespeople when they miss sales and we immediately jump down their throat on improvements. It just makes them less confident. And if they're not confident, they're not enthusiastic, there's going to be very little sales happening there. So that first step is take a second to think and respond appropriately instead of just reacting. Second step goes back to Sakichi Toyota, and he was famous for the 5 whys. So before you try to provide a correction or a solution, ask yourself why 3, 4, 5 times. So just keep asking yourself, well, why do they didn't do this right? Why do I think they didn't do it right? Well, why is that? Why is that? Why did they forget? Maybe there's too much to remember. Maybe there's not enough resources to help them. Maybe they didn't get trained thoroughly enough. Why are they not closing sales? It's not that they don't know what to do, but maybe they're intimidated of the sales process or handling objections. They need the right training. Usually we teach the what, but we don't spend enough time on the how and the why of what they're doing. And that's where there's the disconnect. So really try to dig in on why are the things happening, multiple layers before you just start giving your corrections. You didn't say this right, or, hey, what's going on here? Third tip on managing the cause is recognizing patterns. And if there are more than one person that's consistently not performing well, especially in the same area, then that's probably a lot more than just their behavior. So there's probably a common cause of all those behaviors. So are you monitoring your stats? What are you tracking? And take ownership of this. When we first started Orange Theory, it was like, here's a notebook to track your sales stats. And I'm like, I'm not going to go through and flip through paper pages to find my stats. So we tried multiple CRMs, and you didn't really find stuff we like. Right now we use the one that corporate has, and that's great, but it doesn't give me all that information that I want. So one of our other owners that I went through my training with, he had an Excel sheet that I really liked, and so I stole that from him. He gave it to me, borrowed it, and then I just added all the other stuff that I wanted to track. So specifically when I'm managing, here's some things that I'm looking at. The first thing I'm looking at is the first time close percentage for the front desk. We do offer a free second class from time to time, or if there's a corporate special, but I want to see how many are closing on the first time. If it's not 55 to 60% for us, something's wrong, right? That's a red flag for me. I'm gonna dive in. I don't want them leaning on that crutch, knowing that they can offer a free second class. That really shouldn't be happening very often, if at all. Then I look at my membership mix. And the question with the membership mix, if I see that that's off, I'm asking myself, are they really selling the solution for that customer that's going to help them hit their goal? Or are they selling them the price? Because so often we see our salespeople just drop straight down to the lower price when they get a price objection, but that lower price service might not align with what that customer needs to help them hit their goals, in which case they're not going to become a long-term member because they're not getting their needs met and they quit. So I need to solve that as soon as I see that. That's one of the indicators I'm looking at, is our membership mix. Our coach closing percentage. So in Orange Theory, the front desk does the closing, but the coaches still play a huge role. That's who the person's with for an hour. So I look at each individual coach and what was their closing percentage for that whatever time period. And if somebody's off, maybe there's some trouble with the handoff. Those are things I'm diving into. The number of guests or intros scheduled, that shows me how hard our salespeople are working, or is there any intimidation or fear around the phone? And then how many of those guests showed up? And that's just really how effective are they on the phone? Is their skill level, their tone of voice, following scripts, they know how to answer questions. But those are things that I really don't do a lot of work in our studios anymore. I go in every couple of weeks, I meet with our studio managers, and I look over these numbers. And our managers are good enough now where they know what I'm going to be asking for. They're like, okay, here's the 3 points over the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks that we need to dive into. And I say, great, what are your conversations going to be like? And then we kind of just coach on how are they going to dive into those areas. But we need to know what's going on in our business. You know, as a business owner, you should kind of be like the spider on the web. You don't always have to be right in the middle, but you need to have your feelers on stuff. And if something goes off in your web, boom, you can jump on it just like that. So it's about recognizing those patterns, but more importantly, it's the actions you take to fix those. So let's see where we're at. For managing behavior, we have respond instead of react. We have the 5 whys. We have recognize patterns. The last one, fairly quick, is just set proper expectations and build value in all the areas you expect them to perform in. This goes back on the training of you're selling them on why they should do a good job. Part of selling is building value in what they're doing. So whether that's the percentage that you expect them at, this is the percentage we expect our people to close at. You show them the results, you expect them, show them why we expect that percentage and what they should be hitting. Why admin needs to be done the right way. We sell them on why they need to take the garbage out. We don't just, hey, take the garbage out. Like there's a little bit more to it, like builds value in it. Anything you want done correctly, you should be building value in how to do it and why it's important. So last quick tip on managing, and then we're all done here, is staff meetings. Make sure you're having consistent staff meetings. There should always be consistent talk and teaching of the sales process. Sometimes when we have staffs that are intimidated by sales, we try to just not talk about it in public setting because we don't want to make everybody nervous. You got to talk about it. You got to make it normal. Role playing or discussions is generally some of the best learning formats for the type of people you work with. We could do a whole other message about the CVI, the Core Values Index, but I've studied a lot, thousands of salespeople, and most of them are in that active. They want to be working with people and talking, not just reading a book and memorizing scripts there. Share best practices from top performers. I don't want to be the person who's talking the most at the staff meeting. I want to ask the questions to have everybody else share. So I'm always highlighting our top performers, having them share to reinforce the things that I taught, but it's coming from somebody else there. And then, of course, shameless self-promotion. We often use my course for topics. So I'll send our people to the question and answer section, have everybody watch a quick video, and then they'll discuss those at the sales meetings there. So that is it. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button, the like button, and be sure to share it with anybody who you think this might help. Help me share that sales doesn't have to be that scary, intimidating thing when you do it right. Thanks again, and I'll see you soon.